meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Milanazzo.
Here.
Council Leahy.
Here.
Council Martin
Two present.
is on his way, but he did, here he is now.
Three present.
Thank you. Again, I do appreciate your patience. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to continue discussions regarding the Lord Overpass project. And this evening, we have Diane Tradd, the Assistant City Manager in charge of Planning and Development, along with Craig Thomas from the Planning and Development Office, and Nicholas Bonaceto, Traffic Engineer, and Lisa DeMeo, City Engineer. So what I'd like to do is ask Diane to give us an update, and we will have an opportunity for public input. And again, I do appreciate everyone being here. I would ask, and I know that you do know this, that when you come to the podium, just please sign your name so the clerk has a record. Thank you. And we're also joined this evening by Councilor Dan Rourke and Councilor Rita Mercier, so thank you both for being here as well. So I'll, at this point, ask Diane Tradd to give us an update.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming tonight. It's great to see so many people interested in this very big project for the city. And I'm sure you've seen some activity out at the site. The Jackson Street extension is currently under construction and will be completed by the end of this calendar year. So keep your eyes on that project, which is great. And our consultants at VHB have been very busy behind the scenes doing structural analysis, geotechnical work, traffic studies, and getting all the information that they're going to need to go forward with the design. And what we're going to do is come up with a design based on the information that they get in the field, and we actually are going to start the public process for public input. And the first meeting is scheduled on November 16th at 6 p.m. at the Senior Center. And we'd love for people to come and give us your ideas on walkability, pedestrian issues, streetscape improvements, bikes, any multimodal questions that you may have. And our consultants will be able to tell you whether these things are feasible or not, given the existing conditions. So we expect to have a good turnout for that meeting, and there will be subsequent meetings. I'd like Craig Thomas to go over the plan with everybody, just to refresh your memories. I know we presented it a while ago, but it's easy to forget. So Craig?
Thank you, Diane. Welcome, Craig. Could I just ask a question before Craig starts? On Vanessa Hang and Breslin doing the design, are they at a certain percentage of completion at this point? Is it like 25% complete from a conceptual standpoint, or are they waiting for more public input?
They're waiting for more information in the field before they go forward with more design than what you're seeing here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hello. Thank you, Chair Milanazzo, members of the subcommittee, and thank you, Diane, for the introduction. I think the question that Chairman Milanazzo raised is an important one to remember how we got here now, and what this design is and what's going to happen next. When we first started with the Hamilton Canal District infrastructure planning, and this is a critical part of the Hamilton Canal District and the primary gateway from the Thorndike-Dutton entrance to downtown Lowell, we had money from the state. We used that money to do a series of design studies and actually advance some design to what the chairman referred to as the conceptual level, or the 25% design level. We did that in 2009. This plan, in large part, is based on those 2009 studies. As we've talked about this plan, we've explained the concept for what we call the Lord Overpass, but it includes, I'll say, 3 distinct parts. It includes an intersection here. Well, also, just for clarity, this is Thorndike Street coming in. This is the train station. This is the left turn onto Fletcher right now. And this is coming in with 305 Dutton, the giant furniture mill here. So starting with the 2009 plans, the Lord Overpass project actually had 3 parts. A new 4-way signalized intersection with an extension of Jackson Street to Fletcher Street, an improvement to the Lord Overpass itself, and then walkability and signal improvements all the way out to the Lowell Connector at the intersections here with Highland Street, with YMCA Drive. So working with principally the State House delegation, the city administration was able to secure the funding for the project. We secured it based on the 2009 designs. Remember, these were conceptual or initial type designs, but these hadn't been updated since we'd made progress in the Hamilton Canal, since we had additional development in and around downtown, and since we started to understand the new way people use this intersection, principally as a connection between the Lower Highlands, between the Acre, and to downtown. So working with the state, we took the $15 million grant we received and put together a design component of it. So that's what we're talking about here now. That contracting was finalized this past spring. At the time, we had said, we have this design, this 2009 design, but we hear that people want to do better. We, the city, we also want to do better. We want this to be an intersection and an area, again, the main corridor into downtown Lowell, and as Tom Durkin says, the hub and spokes here, getting in and around downtown. So we wanted to do better for vehicles, for pedestrians, for anyone who was going to be passing through this intersection, both the Lord Overpass itself and the corridor. So we worked with the state to engage VHB. The VHB was actually selected by the state, but they have worked with us for some time, and we're very comfortable with their ability to design this in a way that best meets the city's needs. Since we last spoke, VHB has both been doing some on-site work. While you see this section of Jackson Street being constructed now, from time to time you may see other excavation happening around. They're actually doing geotechnical work. They're trying to understand sort of the baseline parameters, the stuff way, way in the background that is important, but we need to know before we start to actually sort of move the pieces on the map to make design changes. In addition, they've been doing things of traffic counts, what they call origin and destination studies, which is another traffic modeling procedure, which I'll let Nicholas, our transportation engineer, describe in more detail if anyone's interested. But generally, we've been gathering the background information. And that's critical for the first public information session, first public conversation about this design. Again, we, the city, want to do everything we can and want to hear your ideas for what we can do better here. That, again, will take place in November. Here already, we've made a few changes and improvements based on the things that we've heard. We have added sidewalks to all of the ramps to improve safety. We're also investigating the possibility of continuing the sidewalk and tree-protected areas that exist over by the South Common, extending those on all the ramps in the future, again, to enhance the experience. The project will include analysis of what we can do with the overpass itself, and there will be improvements, widening of sidewalks, and we will likely remove the sidewalks from the interior of the rotary, where they're dangerous to access, and they're not appropriately accessible for folks. So again, this is the nature of the project. We talked about this before, and we're here tonight to talk about the progress we've made and some of these background events, or background information gathering, and how we can move forward to start this public conversation to have a series of 3 meetings. One in November, where we can solicit input from everyone and say, what is it that people want to see here? What is it that people want to see this intersection and this transportation hub do? How do we want to see it perform? How do we want to see it function? We're then going to work with VHB, our designers, to create some alternative designs and discuss the pros and cons of those and the limitations, because there are real limitations, both financial, topographic, and related to the bedrock in the area. Finally, after a second public meeting with some alternative design concepts, we'll come to a final design consensus and talk about that and talk about the implications of that at a final public meeting. The first meeting, again, is November 16th. The second meeting will be at the end of January. And the third meeting is sometime around March or April. It depends a little bit upon the level of design needed for the final concept, from that alternative in the second meeting to the final meeting. That's a lot of talking all at once. Perhaps maybe we should ask for questions.
Great. Thank you, Craig. Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. Don't go anywhere, Craig. So a lot of people want to know about the sidewalk. So are we going to direct traffic to one side of the rotary or both sides? A couple years ago, we had a motion about the sidewalk that goes under the Lord Overpass. So where are we directing the traffic and signals and lights and all that, and just one side or both sides? Or?
Yeah, thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Councilor. It's a great question. When you look at this, vehicular traffic will function in substantially the same way it does today. with the exception of movements onto and off of Fletcher Street and onto and off of Jackson Street. Again, because Fletcher Street will now be accessible directly from Jackson Street, as well as have 2 lanes turning off of Thorndike here. And Jackson Street will have an access ramp that comes in off of the overpass and one that merges onto Thorndike.
Did I say
Everybody see that?
I'm sorry, did I say pedestrian traffic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question, but to understand the impacts on the
Okay,
pedestrian
all right,
traffic, you have to understand where the vehicles go. So with those few changes, the vehicles are substantially the same way. So again, just in our initial thinking, we started to say, what is the conflict with pedestrians? Right now, it's principally with vehicles. And where do we see that either because there aren't sufficient sidewalks or accommodations, or people are crossing now in an area that we really need to find a way to make safer? Both of those things are happening. So first, we have areas that need to be made safer with very simple and straightforward improvements. Again, these are sidewalks on all of the ramps up and down, as well as continuous sidewalks and wider sidewalks across the top of the overpass itself. Again, these are the bridge decks right here. They have a sidewalk on the outside and a very narrow one on the inside. Again, the inside ones we find are very dangerous and are difficult to access and are not fully accessible as they currently are, and really, there's not a good way to make them fully accessible. Instead, already in this version of the design, which again is evolving and we want to take as much feedback as possible, we have a wider sidewalk on the outside here. These are 5-foot plus sidewalks on the outside here. So more standard of a downtown type sidewalk. We have sidewalks on the ramps here. So again, those are the kinds of improvements in places where they should have been already. The second point that I was making are places where people are crossing now and finding opportunities to make those safer. That you see principally here at Fletcher and Jackson. We all know there's that long merge coming off of Middlesex, and you see people standing on the island out here, out in the middle, and you wonder, how can they possibly cross there safely? The answer is they can't. Not right now. What we're talking about are a series of what we call pedestrian refuges, that's a planning term, places to stand safely and walk that have short sidewalks, so you don't have to cross one long expanse, which is why you don't see a sidewalk on this side here, but short, safer crossing movements to get people back and forth across safely, where we already see an incredible demand for people to cross.
Okay, so it'll make it much easier to walk from the train station, obviously, to Hamilton Canal District, and then we're gonna eliminate underneath the overpass. We're gonna try to discourage people from going under. We want them to go up and over.
So the feeling amongst the city planning department currently is we want to direct pedestrians and bikes over the ramps. We find that to be safer. There's lower volumes of traffic there. But again, we're open to other ideas. I've heard ideas that include pedestrian tunnels here through the abutments. So we really want to be thoughtful in being open to ideas, but that's why we also have our consultant VHB to look at the technical issues for those kinds of ideas, the cost implications, and the viability while we maintain generally the same kind of vehicular circulation.
Okay. No, I'm good with that. I don't think there's any business, you shouldn't be walking under. I think the way you have people coming up and over is safer, and the wider sidewalks are gonna be nice, so, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Again, we agree with that, but we're open to other ideas just to sort of play them out and to see if there's something we haven't considered and there's a better idea out there that we really can move forward with.
Great, thank you, Craig. Let me recognize Councilor Samaras as being here. Thank you, Councilor Samaras, and City Manager Murphy. Thank you for being here. Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So where there are going to be sidewalks added to the ramps, I think that's a significant improvement. Where's the railroad crossing on that drawing?
So the railroad is actually not well shown on here, but it's over here. This is mislabeled. This is supposed to be the Pawtucket Canal. So the railroad, this is Dunkin' Donuts here. The railroad comes right here and under this section. Comes through here, Middlesex and Chelmsford like that.
All right. And so is Western Ave?
So actually, I'm going to defer to Diane Trout on this. She's actually been working quite a bit, her and Nicholas Bostonetto, on the
So
Western
the
Avenue
big
issue.
question is a bridge up and over the best we can do there? I mean,
Several of us met with the MBTA on-site a week ago last Friday. It can be done. They would not be opposed to giving us air rights. They would not provide any funding. But the first step that we would have to take in order for them to even look at it is to have a feasibility study done. And Nicholas has already contacted the company that they suggested that's done many of these pedestrian overpasses, just to get an idea of what something like that would cost the city, and then we can advise the council if they would like to go forward. They thought it would cost about $2 million, but as far as their permission and legal issues, MBTA, they thought, could give air rights for something like that. They've done it in the past for other towns.
And what's the issue with just crossing at grade?
There's liability issues with that for them, and they will not even consider it.
Saying what kind of trains run there?
It's Pan Am trains, so they're not passenger trains, but there is some talk about having another line in the future that would be passenger. They're not very many trains, and they go slow at that point, but they don't want anyone near the tracks at all, and especially because of that sharp curve right before, like Dunkin' Donuts area, that would be an area that they would not even consider.
And so they block physical access? Is that, what's to stop people from just doing it anyway?
That's what they're doing now, and that's why considering the overpass is something that we should look at, because people, while we were there, they watched people crossing back and forth, and it's dangerous, and it's kids, it's adults, everybody is using that.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilor Samaras?
So
Oh,
that's
sorry.
outside the scope of this project, this
Yes.
$15 million, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Samaras?
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions. First question, lighting. I find in the central core, on top of the overpass, it's very poor lighting, especially late at night. And if there's any mist or rain, you really can't see in that area, people trying to cross at nighttime. Do you plan on better lighting?
That would be considered part of the streetscape improvements that we're going to make, and would definitely be included in the project.
Okay. No, it's good. I mean, we want this to be pedestrian safe and available. The question that Councilor Martin was asking about Weston Ave. Now, Weston Ave at one time was an open street in the city, and the city gave the railroad that street. In the planning, is there any thought of the feasibility of just asking to open up the street and put, regular railroad crossings, which would be far less costly, and allow cars and people to cross the area? Because as you stated very clearly, people from Weston Ave, and if you went there this weekend, they had a very successful weekend, but everything we're trying to do with the Hamilton Canal area, the Textile Museum, they all tie in. And I really think, if you think in terms of economics, that area has to be opened up and to be safe. Is there a possibility of reopening the road? Or is that too?
Very, very briefly, but it sounded to me like they're very close to that. They cited several cases of accidents where they have allowed some traffic to open up and pedestrian on grade, and just people being on the tracks. But I didn't turn on your microphone.
No.
I thought it was. Thank you. Sorry about that. It sounded to me like they're avoiding those situations whenever they can, and that they would not give us approval for that. And that's why going over for pedestrians would work.
But I'm talking about a regular railroad
Right,
crossing.
right.
Has that been broached?
I don't think anything is completely out of line at this point. If we have a feasibility study, we can have that looked at as well. But from our conversation, it sounded as though they would not encourage anything like that.
Yeah. No, I know all of you have been working very hard on this plan, and, it's important. But you see my point, and I think there are people here from Weston Ave, and they're concerned because every day people are crossing the track. And what bothers me is that somebody does, we're busy, we're talking with each other, and even though the trains go very slow, an accident could happen. Then afterwards, there's the gnashing of teeth and saying, we should have done something, and we're responsible. And the railroad knows that that's happening, and sometimes the only reaction I see them doing is putting the fence up, and that would really create a problem. So, I mean, I know we're asking a lot of you, but to explore as many options as possible, including the opening of the
Yeah.
street.
I think you're absolutely right. I think tying that Western Ave, to downtown would be wonderful, whether it is just for pedestrians. We may not have the width to do the whole street, but we are going to work very hard with MBTA and try to move this forward. And hopefully we'll be able to go forward with the feasibility study to look at maybe several different designs.
No, thank you for that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Maris. Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. I just wanted to add that with the feasibility study, I think the road needs to be open. We have to insist that that be open. To spend $2 million for a walkway, it just seems ridiculous. So, I mean, we want it open. We have intersections, at least one intersection in Lowell like this. Maybe we should look at that and see how safe that is or unsafe it is. With today's safety procedures, they've got to make a safer way to cross that road. I mean, they wouldn't have down by Sacred Heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't have that open if it wasn't safe. So, I mean, everybody here, the council, if there's a way, we need that road open.
If there's a way, we'll find it.
Okay,
If there's
we
a way.
appreciate it.
I don't know
Thank
if
you.
Nicholas, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, when we met with MBTA and Keolis out there on the tracks, that was my point. My point was we wanted vehicular access because we wanted to connect that area. The problem there is after the train station, that run of track is used by the freight line to move to maneuver their train, so they're always moving up and down the lines. And the MBTA's position was that the gates at Great Crossing would always be going up and down because the trains would be actuating them as they maneuver in that area. So it's a logistical issue also. But we mentioned they add Great Crossing to them.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we can check. I mean, I'm not there as much as everybody else, so we could study that ourselves and see how much train traffic we think there is too, to make sure that they're telling us the truth. I know that since you've joined the team, you've been doing great work. So we respect the work you do. But if you could get that open, that'd be a bonus.
Thank you, Councilor Leahy. Before the subcommittee opens it up for public input, any of my other colleagues have any comments at this point? Okay, thank you. Any other comments? At this point, the chair would like to open up for public input, so those of you that would like to address the issue before the subcommittee, please feel free to come to the podium, and if you have any comments or questions. And again, please remember to sign in, please. Thank you.
I will. My name is Sarah White, and I live at 27 Jackson Street.
Welcome.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the effort that we are talking about Western Ave and not your fabulous presentation. I really appreciate the presentation and the fact that there's going to be more safe pedestrian access to the Hamilton Canal District as well as across. I travel these pathways a lot, and there are people, mothers and children in strollers going over to the Lowell Health Center. There are students walking to school. It's a nightmare of potential accidents, and I know you know it. So I really appreciate all your efforts. I'm here, of course, to represent the Western Ave Studios Artists Association, and am very much interested in making sure that we can do whatever we can do to help work with you in any way possible to create an easement here somehow so that we can get pedestrian and car traffic through. Things that I have to ask, somebody used the word hopefully in front of the words feasibility study. Does that mean the feasibility study isn't for this project isn't certain and it's only hopeful, or is this a money thing? Can someone address that?
Diane?
We haven't brought it before the council or even the city manager yet. We've just started working with
okay.
MBTA. We just had a meeting, so
Great.
that's
Well,
all.
thank you for having the meeting, and I'll be hopeful with you, too. Okay. What was the other thing? I think it's really tricky to figure out this pedestrian access, whether it's an overpass or whether it's a car access. Things that I would offer as observations for the council, for the Transportation Subcommittee, is that trains often park there for 24 hours. I've seen an engineer get off of his train, leave it running, get in his car and drive away, waiting for the next engineer to show up, and have that train sitting there with all of its energy usage going on for easily a day. So they use it as a parking lot, essentially. And because they're using it as a parking lot right where people would like to cross, people do stupid things like crossing in between the cars and other things like that. There is a lot of traffic on those tracks, as you know. There was an accident not too long ago involving a child, and these are the kinds of things we want to avoid, of course. I just want to say I support all your thoughtful efforts in trying to make this happen in as safe a way as possible. And I also understand there are lots of issues, especially with, just having a corporate body engaged in this. So again, anything we can do to help. Aside from that, so I've done my 2 cents on that. I want to remind you all about snow. That snow falls on sidewalks, and last winter we had some very serious snow coverage on Dutton Street, right at the sidewalk where apartment building 305 is, that never, ever got cleared. And I know it's their responsibility. Something must have happened, but people were walking in the street on Dutton Street during those snowy days. So I just want to, we have to take into consideration everything about the sidewalks, including clearing them when we have another storm, which I'm sure is somewhere in the future. Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Anyone else? Good evening.
My name's Dan McNeil, and I live at 200 Market Street, number 82. I have a quick question in regard to the sidewalks on the overpass seem a huge 300% improvement. It feels like we're 90% there. As far as riding a bicycle up Dutton Street, on the right-hand side of the street with the Dutton Mills and the Textile Museum on your right-hand side, if you want to make a turn onto Westford Street, right now you kind of have to be a little bit bold because the cars, or if you want to go straight down Thorndike Street, which is, if you want to turn, you're actually fine. If you want to go straight down Thorndike Street, the cars that are turning onto Westford Street and onto Middlesex Street have a tendency to, get a little bit close, which tends to discourage people from using the nifty but bicycle pathway on Chelmsford Street. Is there any thought to figuring out how to make that a little easier for people on bicycles wanting to go straight down Thorndike Street, or to turn or not to turn? Usually it's not turning, when you're trying to go down Thorndike Street from Dutton Street, but turning is also an issue. It's just awkward for cars and bicycles at that particular point.
Through you,
Yes.
through you, Chairman. Thanks, Dan, for the question. There is additional width in these lanes, as well as within the right-of-way itself, to investigate different ways to improve the bicycling experience up the ramps. Again, as I've said, it's our position currently that the pedestrian and vehicular traffic should be directed up the ramps, both to link to the more bicycle-friendly Middlesex and Chelmsford streets, but also, again, for safety on Thorndike Street itself. And we're going to investigate ways, and we're, again, interested to hear your thoughts on ways to improve those connections, both to identify the problems, as you have, and to pose potential solutions in these areas. These are tricky intersections. You have lots of movements happening. We can't reduce those movements, but we can try and find ways to make safe accommodations for all users. That's what the city wants to do, and that's what the state requires us to do with their funding.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize Council Rourke first, please. I'm sorry, Council Rourke.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. The question was the timeline for the meetings and then the overall design timeline. So as I mentioned, we've executed the contract for the overall design, and that's in process now. That can proceed concurrently for some time. They can continue to do work on the overall design for some time while we engage in a public conversation, again, for us to understand what the ideas are out there and to pick the best possible solution to improve the safety and transportation options here. This will be done, as I said, March or April. The design for the entire project should be done by the end of next year.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Sorry to interrupt.
So my name's Steve Anstey. I live on Mount Hope Street in Lowell. I was noticing right on the right side of that, there's a railroad crossing over the canal. Oh, and I know NL has rights on it. Yeah, and there's a railroad crossing right there. I realize Amtrak doesn't really want us to cross their tracks. And I'm under the impression that NL doesn't really want us going over their canal. But there's already a railroad bridge right there. And I thought if it becomes necessary, you could actually, there's quite a bit of access down to that railroad bridge. And you could probably put a pedestrian bridge like right alongside of it or connected right to it. You could get them across the canal and the tracks because the tracks are already crossed further up. So I just wanted to throw that on the, I mean, it's not, I don't think that would ever be preferred, but at least it would be a safer way than nothing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Council Rourke?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I couldn't hear that actually. Oh, yep, I got it. Thank you. So thank you to City Engineer Lisa DeMeo for that. The courthouse is the DCAM, the state entity that manages the construction of the courthouse, has been in close communication with the city, and we're working together to make sure that these projects fit together in a way that's most beneficial to the city. Both are really critical to the city itself and critical to each other for success. Again, as Diane Trad mentioned, we're building this section up to here, so everything above my hand of the Jackson Street extension, that's really the construction access for the court. That's the trial court access way, if you will. These roadways here are designed to maximize the slow and safe access of pedestrians and vehicles into the trial court as well. And so we've worked with them and we'll continue to work with them.
The utilities for the courthouse are already installed. We've worked with them extensively to make sure that their sewer, water, and electric and gas are already in place, so they don't have to do any of that work when we're doing our work. So they've got that done ahead of time.
Great. Thank you. Ma'am.
Hi, I'm Judith Durant, and I live on Viola Street. And I'd like to reiterate what Dan said about bicycling the Lord Overpass. Not only is it difficult to go, if you want to go straight on Thorndike. I live off of Chelmsford Street. If I'm coming up here and I want to make a right on Chelmsford Street, it's really treacherous because there are 2 lanes going right, and we go right into a right turn only lane. So I have to be right in the middle of traffic, which I do, but I know a lot of people aren't that bold. So I'd just like to ask you to please take bicycles into account because it's a lot easier to ride my bicycle downtown. I don't have to look to park, anything. That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Councilor,
Durkin?
my name is Tom Durkin. I don't want to say I reside at, but I pretty much do full-time at 287 Applin Street since 1961. I abut the Lord overpass. My office looks out over the overpass. I think I have speed dial to police for the accidents. A point of clarification, a lot of the problems I see out there is frustration, with a capital F. You had, in the 70s, the lights were added. The lights on overpasses that don't exist in most of the state's highways. At the time, there was a one-way argument for Appleton and Middlesex Street, and the state joined into it with the addition of the lighting. The one-ways were defeated actually the night that Nixon was resigning, to be exact, and we ended up with the lights. Now, the lights don't talk to each other, period. They're not synchronized, so if you're coming from Chelmsford Street and you got a red light and you're held up and the light turns green, it's Indianapolis 500 to the next set of lights, which is the crossover to go down to the perpendicular crossing over to the street that goes down to the old Commodore. And then when that light turns green, believe me, you got to get the hell out of the way. They'll come out to across Applin Street maybe 60 miles an hour. So when you go to the pedestrian problem, the pedestrians are trying to negotiate a crossing over on a set of traffic lights that aren't talking to each other, and the general motoring public do not go at 20 miles an hour. They are 495 mentality on the overpass. So I know in Craig Thomas's plans that we've discussed with Jamber and that there will be lights that are synchronized that'll be talking, and that alone will do a major change. The frustration when you come onto Applin Street, it's 2 lanes almost to the Owl Diner. And I watch them go across, I mean, there's a blur. And they are literally fighting with each other. Tommy Shanahan tells a story that he was fought all the way down at the diner and almost get hit. Through Rita Mercier, we adopted a number of years ago a crosswalk unit that was put out into the roadway, and that stopped 2 lanes from coming onto Appleton Street, and literally they got polite. You want to go? You want to go? And they came onto the highway, onto Appleton, probably 20, 25 miles an hour. When the gentleman who was in charge of the road surveys for Trinity Development argued for a 2-lane coming into Applin Street, that kind of got disappeared. But the real problem that is causing some of these other issues is the traffic lights are not talking and the frustration of the general public. My building was hit 3 times in probably 12 months. Cars bouncing off each other, going into the thing, and they're not going 20 miles an hour. And it isn't so much that you want to stop the speeding. The speeding is a result of the frustration. You got to correct the lighting. So your pedestrians will get along a lot easier crossing over, and the traffic would be more polite. Now, my old statistics that I had going back to the Sampson Connect years was it was high 40,000, like 45,000 traffic count on the Lord Overpass. It is the axle of the wheel of this city. Joe Sixpack and Mr. Bank President use it. It's not a demographic area like the Rourke Bridge or satellite area. The Lowell Connector was like 32,000. Kearney Square was 15,000. The O'Donnell Bridge was 42. So when you look at the overpass, it has a real good mixture. And I used to kid Rita in one of my earlier times here that it's a grand old lady, and I wanted to qualify. I wasn't talking about Rita, but it works. It isn't something you need to tear down as the Trinity Development wanted to eliminate a bridge over there. It needs to be tweaked. It needs to be handheld to get it done. But the traffic lights are primarily the issue that's causing the secondary issues. By the way, nice seal. I don't know where you got it.
Thank you, Mr. Durkin. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mindy Doppler-Nelson, and I'm a downtown Lowell resident and a public health scientist. I wanted to share some numbers with you. These just were released today. Many people in the city of Lowell participated in the National Bike Challenge, and between May and October, we collectively logged over 18,000 miles that we biked, and that saved more than 4,500 pounds of carbon and burned more than 1 million calories. So that just shows to you that we really do bicycle in and around and out of Lowell. And so I implore you to consider bicycling in this scenario. A radical thought that I had was, wouldn't it be nice if the overpass was dedicated specifically for pedestrians and cyclists, and not cars at all, and the cars were diverted to the lower level. Now, as a public health scientist, where I am thinking of is not just the safety, but also the breathing of the car fumes. And there have been studies that show that when people are walking and bicycling near cars, they tend to accumulate a lot more black tar in their lungs. So this is also a public health aspect. I don't know how much of that can actually be done in reality, but instead of maybe having multiple lanes in the overpass, maybe it would be better to have at least one of those lanes for cars and one of them geared more toward people on bicycles and pedestrians. As far as the Thorndike access, I take that on a regular basis, and I feel like I take my life in my own hands. I like the idea of having the designated sidewalks, but something that they do in other countries that I think that could serve as a model. They do tend to be about 20 years ahead of us in that advancement, as was presented at the New England Bike Walk Summit last week. And that is perhaps widening the sidewalks even more and having a designated section on those sidewalks for people on bicycles versus pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Craig?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mindy, for your thoughtful comments. I'd actually encourage you to not discount your own ideas so quickly, because we're not sure if that is a feasible idea. I'd encourage you and anyone with similar ideas to come November 16th to put these ideas out there, and we can put them to our professional designers to see what may or may not work. You know, again, we feel like we have a design that works, but we are always open to improving this for all passengers, vehicles, bikes, transportation, constituents, anyone who uses this, who's a stakeholder, and who passes through.
Thank you. Yes, good evening.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, that's okay. I'm Regina Bragdon. I live on Dutton Street, and I actually live in the American Textile Museum.
Could you speak in the microphone, please?
Oh.
Thank you.
I live on Dutton Street, and I live in the Textile Museum, and I just have a couple of thoughts. My living room window looks over the overpass, and this winter was absolutely terrifying. That sidewalk never got plowed, not once. The museum sidewalk was plowed, 305 wasn't. We had kids and strollers and commuters walking in the middle of the road on the overpass. I don't know whose responsibility that is, if it's a state road or the city's supposed to be plowing it, but it's obviously not a building owner's. And if there's any way, you know, the commercial buildings can be forced to plow their sidewalks. I mean, walking on Dutton Street just isn't feasible. The other comment I have is actually, Craig, I think you guys, everyone that's been involved has done a fabulous job, and I really appreciate the community input. The access to the museum is tricky, and I'm just wondering how the really, you know, the ineffective access to the museum affects the museum itself. And I know when I come in, I have to sort of race my car up on the washboard and, you know, hope to God no one's going to rear end me. And since 305 opened up their driveway, we have the museum and 305 right next to each other coming onto Dutton Street. I don't know if anything can be done to alleviate that, or to have have like a median access for the two buildings. And one of my neighbors, who would really love, I'm just speaking for him, but it would be nice if the sidewalk in front of 305 could be a little wider, because right now you're like jammed right up against the building, and I don't know if that's possible,
no.
But it's just a thought, but thank you all very much.
Thank you for being here. We'll certainly take those comments into consideration. I can see our city engineer making notes over there. Okay. Any other comments? Questions? Yes, sir. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Paul Bissett. I live on Buttman Road. And seeing how I've been a bus driver in the city for Wanna-Lancet Mills, I was talking to a couple of counselors. And in that area, it seems all these first of all these ideas are good ideas with the walk path going up along the ramp. It's a very good idea. If we can make a bike path that goes up there, it'd probably be a good idea too. But cutting down the traffic on this connector would be a good idea. And right now I can see that people who live in the Drake It area don't have access to Drake It, and they come down the Lowell connector, go around the Songus Arena. Is there any way of talking to Drake It and getting access to Drake It so they don't have to make that cut down on the traffic, cut down on the chance of injury?
Mhm.
And also, the trolley, I was told that there's possibility of the trolley moving into that area, going from the Gallagher Station all the way down.
That's correct, yes, yeah.
Is that taken into consideration on this plan?
I believe it is, yes. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments. I think we have time for maybe one or two more comments. Yes, sir.
My name is Mark Connors. I live at 525 Pawtucket Boulevard. My only comment would just be to keep in mind the location of the commuter rail station. That is an advantage we have compared to our kind of northern neighbors, Nashua, Manchester. It's a, I think, very important competitive advantage that we have downtown commuter rail access. And when people come to the city, they leave the station, they kind of form their first impression of Lowell. Right now, I don't think it's a very positive one. It's not obviously very easy to get downtown. So I'd be kind of hesitant to rebuild the overpass almost identical to how it is now. Think about, since this is something we're going to be dealing with for, you know, a long time, to have it's not enough just to have, you know, sidewalks and crosswalks, but that experience has to be comfortable, it has to be attractive and pleasant. And if we want people to continue to come back to Lowell, I think we really need to be careful. Hopefully in the next maps we do, we can kind of label where the station is and kind of, you know, the experience that it will be for pedestrians coming into the city. So
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Again, thank you all for being here. We certainly appreciate the public input. I know that the city will put on our website the next meeting, which is November 16th at the Senior Center at 6 p.m. And I want to thank members of the City Manager's Administration, Diane Trad, thank you, Nicholas, thank you, Craig, and Lisa, thank you very much for all being here. Any other comments from my colleagues? I would entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Councilor Leahy, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor indicate by saying
Yes.
aye. Thank you. Thank you again for coming. Subcommittee stands adjourned.